everybody, Ben for the Bonehead podcast, and we've got a very cool unbox and review for you today. Thanks to Entoyment Wargaming in Poole, our friends, a great online shop and a really great friendly local gaming shop. We have got our hands on the Amazon team, so we're going to give them a bit of an unbox and review. Okay, so we've got the Amazon box here and we're going to give it an open and see what's inside. Now, before we go anywhere, you guys will know that there are 12 players in this box. You've got the two blockers, who are the cat-posed claw people. You've got two blitzers, who are the running pose kind of people. I don't know if there's anything differentiates them. They don't have the eagle claws that the linemen do. The linemen have got the eagle claws there, and the throwers have got the snakes, which is fine. So, inside the box, let's get rid of the box. Thank you very much. You will have the instructions. Quite important. We'll have a look at that in a minute. You've got the stickers there. What do we got? 2 python throwers, 2 jaguar blockers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 linewomen, and 2 piranha blitzers. You've got all the numbers there in black and white with a few team logos as well. So, pretty much normal. When it comes to running your Amazon team, if you want to go line woman heavy, you'll need a second box, I guess. Otherwise, you get all the positionals, and 12 players with all the positionals is probably enough for you to get started with Amazons. Okay, you get 2 sprues with all the bits and bobs on, and all the 32mm bases that you could want. So as let's see if we can zoom in a little bit. See if we can get a better shot of these sprues. Let's get rid of one of them. So you'll see that there is a ton of detail. That's one of the crystal balls. Crystal skulls. Crystal skull balls. They're quite fun. They're also there in the Spike magazine, which is pretty cool. So, I mean, we always do this. We look at this and you can see that the sculpting is brilliant from Games Workshop. I mean, they do a really good job making models, whether you like the poses or not, whether you like the contact points or not. It's entirely up to you. So you got a ton of bits. They actually do have alternate heads for the Amazons here, which is really cool. That's, I think, the only interchangeable piece. There's a hand for the thrower, where you've got a hand or a ball. So that's also a little bit of an alternate piece, I guess. Anyway, we're going to have a look at the instructions quickly, because I think that's probably a better way to kind of warn you about how these guys build. They are not the worst. I think that is the best way to say it. If you built Elven Union or Dark Elves, they are the worst. The Undead team is also a little bit challenging. These guys aren't too bad. So I started out by building some of these last night. If you guys joined us on the Patreon live stream, you would have seen that. And actually, it's fine. The little crotch tassels being separate was a bit annoying, but that's okay. So for the linewoman, that's fine. The next linewoman, again, that was fine. The Eagle Warrior was a little bit of a slightly different story, because this is where the individual parts of the body being glued on separately started to happen. So this one here has got 1 foot up in the air and 1 leg is separate. So your contact point is literally the end of this Disney princess toe going in the shoe. So yeah, this is a very realistic representation, and that is the contact point. So if you're using these and gluing these, unless you're using resin bases, I do recommend plastic glue. I am a super glue warrior because it's faster, but actually when it comes to these pieces, you need that bond, you need that adhesive bond. Cool thing is you've got alternate heads on each of these. I think the only difference is that they've kind of got a face grill on them, but I mean, it's good to have difference when it comes to your teams. The line women aren't too bad, and then we've got the positionals, and this is where it got a little bit ropey. So Jaguar Warriors, Piranha Warriors, they've both got separate faces to separate hairs. They're not interchangeable though. 15 goes with 49 and must always go with 49. 32 must go with 33 and must always go with those two. So you do have a 2-bit piece to glue together that can be a little bit fiddly, and you will end up with like a separation line that is, I think, all right once you start painting them. Now, I've actually been busy, and again, while we were doing the podcast last night, I started getting some paint on mine to kind of see, but I think even there you can see the separation line between the neck and the head, which, to be fair, when you put the model down flat, it isn't going to show up, but it's just something there to be wary of. The foot was fine, and actually, even though they've got separate heads, the thrower was a pain to build with all the legs. You've got to be very patient. That's all I'll say when you're building these. None of it is too fiddly. The way the heads go on the bodies is not plug and play, so you might have to do a little bit of fandangling to get it right, to get it looking right. And as I look through some of my models, I think some of the heads I didn't necessarily glue on perhaps as accurately as I should have done. But, I mean, once it's primed, once it's painted, and once they're on the pitch, I don't think anyone's going to see, and I know for certain that nobody is going to care. But if you are meticulous, then you're going to need to spend a bit of time dry fitting, test fitting, and getting the angle of the face all right. They were fine. They weren't hard to build. They weren't easy to build, I would say. They weren't a nightmare. They weren't a doddle. It took probably about an hour and a half to build the whole team. You know, what we try and do when we do the unboxing reviews and have like a time-lapse thing. I did record a couple of videos, but you will see me failing abysmally. Because each of the arms are separate, you kind of glue the head on, and then you glue an arm on, and then you go to glue the other arm on. But if the glue isn't set on the left-hand arm, you have to kind of... It was inelegant, but actually they built together quite nicely, and I wasn't worried about that. Now, you've got the rules for the team on the back here in multiple languages, which I actually really like in Games Workshop at the moment. I talked about this on Monthly Meta this week. If you're just getting into the game, you can basically... You know, I'm trying to make it as easy as possible, Siri. You can kind of just pick up the box, and the rules for the team come in the box. Even the hit and run trait for the new Blitzer is in there, which I think is really good. So if you're getting into Blood Bowl, they are doing a much better job of making it accessible, which I do enjoy. Now, we're going to look at some of the models here. Where to start? So I started painting some of these yesterday. I was trying to use this slap chop method that everyone's talking about, and I think you'll agree it didn't go brilliantly, but it's good to try stuff. What have we got? What are we missing? We've got the blocker, we've got some blitzers, we've got some humans, and we've got some size comparisons, which is definitely the most interesting thing when it comes to the Amazons. So, blitzer, blocker, thrower. Let's get you out of the way. Let's start off with the line people. Here we go. So, this is a line woman model. I'm going to try and zoom in a little bit more. Let's see if the autofocus can do it. Come on, autofocus. You've got this. It's a little bit too blurry for me, so I think we'll just have it zoomed out a little bit, and then we will do this instead. There we go. Look at that. Almost got it working. Almost perfectly. Okay, so this is one of the line women. I've primed it black. I've given it a zenithal with white, and then I've given it a dry brush with white as well. In fact, I bought some cheap makeup brushes to do the dry brush to try and get the slap chop method working. I'm not convinced. It just makes everything grey, so that's probably on me, but let's not worry about that. This is one of the sculpts, and as you can see, they're actually pretty cool. I've not done a great job clearing it up, but I never do, and I think a lot of players probably won't, because this is, you know, this is a game you play. There's some lovely teams out there, and this is a pretty reasonable one. Shall we do the size comparisons? Let's take a nobility thrower, because I think nobility are kind of one of the more ubiquitous teams due to them being in the starter set. Okay, lining them up against the nobility thrower. This is one of the line women. Size is all right. She's on her tiptoes, so she's likely to be a little bit taller, but actually, when it comes to a decent comparison, they don't look bad. And then when you do the kind of top-down test, mass-wise, there's a little bit less mass for this one, but the human guy's got more armor, so that one kind of reads out all right. We'll take a second line woman, do the same comparison test, and you can see that actually the scale is fine for the line woman. If we bring over the wood elf, because the wood elf tends to be the smallest scale of the teams, then actually the wood elf and the Amazon line up pretty nicely, I think. So actually the line woman scale, pretty good, and if you compare them to a strength 4 chonga like our black orc here, the black orc is clearly much bigger. So line women, strength 3, armor 8+, makes a lot of sense. Let's go with the python thrower now. It's a cool model actually. The snake is going to be interesting. The detail on the snake is a little bit thinner than you would kind of expect, but it is a plastic sculpt, and sometimes when you get plastic sculpts you have to be You have to kind of, it's like due to undercuts and stuff, but actually it's not going to be a problem. You don't want any more detail than you've got. It's a team that I think is going to paint up quite easily, which is wonderful. And again, size-wise, the human thrower stacks up nicely against the Amazon thrower, so I'm happy with the scale there. Then we get to the combat pieces. Now we're going to start with the Blitzer, whose model looks a little bit like a blocker, but that's okay. Okay, so this is the Blitzer model. These are the cool ones that are movement 7 and have hit and run. No block anymore. I think she feels a little bit slighter than the Line Women. And I know that it's there's the crouching pose and everything, but she just feels a little bit smaller. I don't know why. Maybe it's to represent that they're faster, maybe. But she does look and feel a little bit smaller. And when it comes to your Blitzers, you want your Blitzers to be exciting pieces. It's a cool enough pose, but when you line them up next to that human, I'll admit she's in a crouching pose, but she just looks quite a lot smaller. Now, I don't think it's really going to impact on the game. It's just I was expecting a slightly larger model, and I think if we compare it to the Wood Elf there, you can see that yeah, it's fine. They're fine. It's fine. It's a cool enough pose. I think if you want your Amazons to be nice and impactful, you might have to do a little bit of creative basing. So maybe do some like cork raises to make them seem a little bit bigger, to make your Amazon Blitzers stand out a little bit more. I think the Blitzer versus the Line Women, I know that the Line Women have got the eagle claws, but the Blitzer just doesn't stand out. It's a bit unremarkable. Now it's got the cool helmet, but I think you might have to do something, maybe paint the hair a different colour, or the shoulder pads a different colour, so that they pop, so that you know who your star player is. Although, let's face it, the star player for the Amazon team is now this model here, which is the blocker model. So the blocker model is a cool sculpt. We've got this wicked crouching pose. We've got that terrible gluing job there where I put the head on slightly adjacent to the neck. So when you put a bit of ink on, it's just got like a heck of a chiseled jawline. Long witch elf hair. You've got two different options of the hairs. They're not massively different. The helmets aren't massively different. I think this one's slightly cooler. Did I break it off? Oh no, it's the feather in the top. So you can kind of differentiate your blockers, but the only concern I have with the blockers is their size. This is a strength 4 piece, and if you line it up to one of your line Amazons, yeah, they're the same scale, but because they're crouching, they look really quite small, which I was very surprised by. And then you kind of compare it to another player, for example, a strength 3 Wood Elf, and they're the same scale. She's the same size. And then you compare the strength 4 blocker to the strength 3 human thrower, and the strength 3 human thrower is just way chunkier. They've got the same armor. This one should just be strength 4. So we talked about it on the podcast, and I think Ben or chat or the Patreon chat pointed it out. They were like, this team was designed before the rules were designed, or designed separately, because this is small for a strength 4 piece. Now when the Norse team came out, we had Ulfweriders, and the Ulfweriders were a little bit on the small side as well. They were the same scale as the linemen, but they were strength 4. The Ulfwerider kind of towers over this blocker model. So of these two, you would expect this to be strength 4, absolutely. And even from like a tabletop down shot, there's not a lot of heft there to this model. It's a cool model. I thought this was the Blitzer at first because we've got this fast running pose and the claws. I do wonder if the team's delay was due to some kind of last minute restructure of it, and maybe that this had claws and frenzy or something. Maybe Dauntless, strength 3 still, but they went with strength 4 in the end. Now, don't get me wrong, the rules are super cool for this team. I really like what they've done. The model doesn't fit it, and when you put it next to another strength 4 piece, the Black Orc is massive compared to this Amazon. That's a 1-die block. That is it. That is the only questionable thing about this team. It is a great set of models. They're not that bad to build. Sometimes Games Workshop teams can be very bad to build. This one was absolutely fine. You'll have a nice evening building it. And then actually, I've started painting them up. They're fun to paint up. And they're really quite simple to paint up. So my whole thing here was that I was going to try and use this happy slapping painting technique to kind of be like, hey, I painted this up in 2 hours while I did the podcast, and I started slapping the paint on, and because I guess I hadn't dry brushed it right, the flesh started going grey. But it does take contrast paints really well, so actually if you do it properly, you will have no difficulty painting this team in not a lot of time. There's not a huge amount of like egregious detail as well, which is really bonus, because actually that means if you want to be a pro painter, you can spend your time layering, or you can spend your time doing dags and checks and stripes and things. But if you're a gamer and you want to get your team to the table really fast, it's only going to take you a couple of hours with some contrast paints, and because of the raised detail, it is going to do a really good job of it. So I like it a lot. Okay, so there you have it, the new Amazon team from Games Workshop. Generally speaking, really like it. The sculpts are really fun, they're well done, and I do quite like it. The blocker and the blitzer, they don't upset me too much, but they're noticeable. They're not as cool as you'd want them to be, and even though the blocker is in a cool pose, it doesn't feel like a blocker. However, we talked about this on the podcast as well. We went through this with the Imperial Nobility team. You know, we were like, I'm never going to tell these positionals apart. And actually, you know what? I think after a month of playing games, you're definitely going to know. However, there are some players there that will paint the rims of their positionals bases different colours. This might be the team to start doing that with. Or painting the shoulder pads different colour, like red for blockers or whatever. I think it might be worth doing. Now, the team and the rules we'll cover in the unboxing of the Spike magazine, but we've done it in a ton of videos already. The team rules are very exciting. So if you are looking for a really exciting Blood Bowl challenge, then the Amazon team, 10 out of 10. Absolutely would recommend. And this video is going out on Thursday, so join us tonight at 8 o'clock UK time for a live game with Amazons versus Lizards. And if you're watching this in the future, come back to the past and watch the rerun of the game, because it's a great way to experience how the Amazons actually work on the pitch, and maybe they'll just get crushed by Lizardmen. I don't know. They've still got a lot of dodge, and these strength 4 guys could be pretty great. Anyway, thanks very much for watching. We'll be back soon with more Blood Bowl content. Happy blocking. Thanks very much for watching. We really appreciate your support. If you want to support the channel even further, please like and subscribe. It really does help us out. Or come join us on YouTube Members or in Patreon, where you can get exclusive access to some content, some loot, early access to basically everything we do, as well as regular competitions. Or you can pick up some Bonehead Podcast loot either on our website at boneheadpodcast.com. We've got the Dungeon Bowl things, we've got tokens and stuff like that, or on our Spreadshirt site as well. Everything you do just helps us make more content and hopefully do it of better quality. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Happy blocking.